Hi everyone, my name is Sol. I'm a sociology student here at Miracosta, and I'm going to be reacting to the text and reading in our sociology class. So in the text that we read about women's rights, more specifically Seneca Falls and the suffrage, I noticed that there were a lot of things I didn't know and a lot of things I learned about women's rights and the roots of it, the beginnings. I learned that the importance of discussion surrounding women's rights and its implications is the priority in the talk about women's rights, as well as that we can discuss the solution to the issues that we pose on a daily basis. There's not going to be a true answer. There's not going to be one solution. There's not going to be one right way of thinking. We must consider all aspects of our knowledge, our education, the people that we've had influence, women's rights and movements from the beginning, and to equally recognize the impact that the exclusion of groups of women has on the study of it. Attempting to look at this from an intersectional lens means having a wider geographical focus, more broadly defined, and it's acknowledging that some political claims came and come from diverse racial, national, class, and regional backgrounds, and we should similarly recognize the contribution that Black women have made to early and current women's rights, not just Black women, people of color, women of color specifically, supporting and speaking in many facets. There are many ways that their contributions got swept under the rug due to racism and the overtaking of women's rights by white women attempting to communicate issues that affect all women, yet lacking the information and education that Black women could provide regarding their perspective in society and as a Black woman in society, which is integral and vital to women's studies. So after listening to the podcast and doing a little bit of research based on the topics that they talked about, I really enjoyed hearing them talk about the impact of women's studies and how it's involved in everyday communities. Also, how much you can do with a women's studies degree. I feel that most people see the degree as not as useful as other ones, which is absolutely not true. It was really important how they talked about that people with jobs that are very important in our society and community and the way that we live our lives have a women's studies degree. So having people with that background, that education, is really, really important. I also thought it was really interesting and exciting how the doctor talked about empowering new generations of girls and women into women's studies and just empowering them through feminism in general. I think it's really important to have people who are dedicated and passionate about involving girls and women, understanding how important it is to be involved and understand the history and the contributions that women all around the world have made, along with educating young people, because that is one of the most important things to continuing the study of women and addressing the large issues in our society. Discussing and talking about these things brings light to the issues and calls for a solution. And one thing that I thought was interesting that they brought up was how women's studies was not academically recognized for a long time. So I did a little bit of research and saw that even like Ivy League schools did not recognize women's studies as a degree, which I think says a lot about how they viewed women's studies in society and its place in society and women's place in society as a whole. We can also really see the progression of education over time, as at one point this wasn't even an option to be studied, and now we have people who go on to be lawyers, doctors, all of the above, who have this knowledge, who have this degree. We can see how at the beginning of education, classrooms were filled with a small amount of female students, and now a majority of college graduates are women. All in all, education is a huge part of why women's studies in society continues to grow and have place in major institutions, political discussions, Overall, I really enjoyed listening to this podcast. It was really informative and got me to look more into women's studies and the history of it and where it came from and where it is now. And thank you so much for taking your time to watch this.